Welcome to Ask a Garden Coach. I am Carolyn May of Kits Up Roots, and I am excited to help you guys grow the best seedlings ever. Yeah, you think when you're growing things from seed, you're like, well, I put a seed in the dirt and I water it. That's enough, right? You know what? You might get lucky. It might work, but there's a lot of things that can happen. So in this episode of Ask a Garden Coach, I have some questions I'm going to answer from you guys, but also I'm going to show you the difference of thinning, of legginess, algae growth, gnats, all kinds of different things, what they are, why they're there, and what you can do to fix them, or is it even a big deal in the first place? So stay tuned all the way to the end with all of that information. As many of you know, if you've watched any of the other Ask a Garden Coach episodes, I have been experimenting with soil blocking my seedlings. Soil blocking is a fantastic technique that's been around since at least the 70s. It's picking up a lot of momentum here in the United States, and there are a lot of questions around it. And I thought, what better way to really showcase this growing method than doing a side-by-side comparison of the exact same crop? So I've decided to do two crops. I'm going to do my Dahlia seedlings in both soil blocks and cell trays, and I'm going to be doing tomatoes in soil blocks and cell trays. I picked these two because they have very similar growing needs, and it'll be really fun to compare. Besides, I like growing a lot of both of those, so they will have a place in my garden. So stay tuned for that experiment. It's going to be lots of fun. Let's get into caring for your seedlings. The first question I got this week was, how do you thin your seedlings? Or do I need to thin my seedlings? What does thinning even mean? Okay, so when you plant seeds in trays or soil blocks, oftentimes you'll end up with more than one seedling growing in that cell. And you might think, great, free plants. And totally, that's exactly what it is. But if you leave them really, really tight together, they're going to compete as they grow. They're going to compete for water. They're going to compete for nutrients, light, air circulation, all of those things. And so if you leave them together, you're going to have less success. So there's two options when it comes to thinning your seedlings. You can trim out the extra seedlings, or you can thin by teasing apart the little starts and growing them on separately. And I'm going to show you both processes. There's two ways to thin your seedlings. You can either cut out the extra seedlings, or you can tease them apart. When they're really young like this, there's not a lot of root system, and it's pretty easy to do. But first, if you're going to cut them out, take your snips or tools, separate out whichever one you're going to remove, and just cut it off from as low as you can. The root system in there will just die off, and it'll be fine. And then this part, microgreens. Yummy. This is a red lettuce, so totally edible. I would not eat them if they were a tomato or a pepper or anything like that, but if it's an edible green, go ahead. Now, if you're going to tease these ones apart, first I'm going to break apart this soil block that I made. I'm not going to grab onto the stems, because if the stem breaks, the plant is dead. If the leaves break, it might still grow back. So grab onto the leaves very carefully and just tease them apart. Well, that was really easy, but then you have all of those roots, beautiful roots in that plant. And then to plant it, you have a new area. Here I have some cell trays. I'm going to use some chopsticks to get that root to go down into the hole, and then just nestle it right in. And then we'll do one more. Right here, make my hole, take my little seedling, holding it by the leaves, not by the stem. Oh, come on. And then once it's in there, just nestle it in. After you get them nestled in, make sure you label it, water them in, and they will grow on just like the rest of them. So the rest of these lettuce, I will have to thin out or separate into something like this. My next question comes in and it says, I have algae or green stuff growing on the top of my seedling tray. Help. algae is a totally normal, common thing that happens when you're growing seeds inside. And the reason it grows is because algae is something that the spores are in the air and they find a place to rest, and it is nice and moist and it is nice and warm, and that's their most favorite environment, and they grow. Usually you get algae when your seed mix is sitting too wet on the surface. You're overwatering, or the surface is just not drying out. There's two ways to fix this. One, bottom watering. Instead of overhead watering, only water from the bottom of your seedlings, because that's where the roots are. The roots are coming out the bottom. That's where the water is needed. And then the other thing you can do is to increase, not improve, I guess it's improving. Yeah. Increase the air circulation. A fan is a fantastic thing in your seed starting area. Now, what I have going for my seed starting is that I have a small 4-tier greenhouse that is currently sitting in my unheated garage, which at nighttime gets down to around 40 degrees. And I'm trying to keep the temperature more like 65, 70 degrees in there. So I zip it shut. That's not so great for airflow and circulation. So I have had a bit of algae growing on my seedlings that I can show you guys. Now, a little bit of algae, not a big deal. Basically, if your seedlings are going to be going out soon, the algae it's not going to compete. It's not going to be a problem. However, it gets out of control, it grows too much, then it can compete with your plant and become a problem. So in that case, one, you want to let that surface dry out quickly. So get a fan on it. And then two, bottom water. I have here an artichoke that I was growing, and the algae, you can't really see it too much. It's hard to see it, but it's really, I guess I don't have any algae that's super green to show you on the film, but you'll get this green tinge in the top. And again, you want to have that airflow happen. You can take your fingers and gently move around the surface. It's easy on this plant because it's a little bit bigger. If I was working with these little lettuces down here, I'd probably damage those. So probably avoid that with really tiny seedlings, but you're just trying to get the surface of the soil to dry out. All right, let's talk about just some other common seed starting problems you're going to run into. And really, instead of being freaked out by all of these different things, take them as symptoms of the environment. Symptoms of the environment that you need to address and adjust. And if you do adjust it, they'll just keep growing and be fine. Most seed starters, probably all seed starters, have these issues at one point almost every season. I'm assuming that. Maybe it's just me that has all these things because I'm not as good at taking care of my seedlings as some other people. I'm a bit of a lazy gardener, totally admit it. But again, it's okay. It's okay. All right, number one, fungus gnats. You have your seedlings inside, and there's these teeny tiny fruit fly looking things flying all over the place. It's gross. What do I do? Fungus gnats, totally common. They, like algae, prefer moist, warm, bright places, just like where you're starting your seeds. And like algae, to combat fungus gnats, you need to let the surface of your seed starting mix dry out because they lay their eggs on the surface of the soil. And so then those little eggs hatch, and then the larva starts to possibly eat some of your seedlings, and that can cause some damage. Usually they're not that big of a deal if you have a couple of them, but if left to their own devices in those happy conditions, they're going to keep multiplying and cause problems. You can get sticky traps, and I will put a link down below in the description. But these are yellow sticky traps. The fungus gnats are attracted to them, and they'll just stick to them, and that's a pretty easy way to deal with them. The next thing we're going to talk about is drooping leaves. Drooping leaves is different than curling leaves. I don't have any examples of drooping, but basically it's your plant is dehydrated and it's lost too much moisture through transpiration in the leaves, and the leaves just start to droop, kind of like limp lettuce when you buy it from the store. That's because it doesn't have enough water. So water your seedlings. If on the other end of the spectrum, your leaves start to curl, they're not dry, there's lots of moisture, but they're curling. And I have an example of that here with a Dahlia seedling that I grew. I started this late January, and as you can see, like you look at these leaves and they are very curled. Now the top ones look totally fine. Why? What happened here? Okay, I overwatered. I got too overzealous and I overwatered my seedling, and the leaves actually grew this way. Like if you could feel it, they're not going to uncurl. They are actually growing. They grew this way. So what I did was I laid off in the water. I even made some channels and probed into the soil to help dry it out even faster, just to stave off that problem. And now the new leaves on top are beautiful, growing normally. They look great. Also, since we're on this dahlia topic here, I wanted to show you my soil blocked dahlia seedlings. So this one, I did start it in a soil block, but I got a little curious and I went to pick it up, and the soil block fell apart because my soil block mix, I'm still working on that one myself. So I put it into this 4-inch pot. Here, I have seeds that were started the exact same day. Let's move this stuff out of the way. And you'll notice right off the bat, they are, well, even if I lift them up, so they're at the same soil height, they are much smaller than the one in the 4-inch pot. The leaves are not quite as green. Okay, what can I diagnose from this? Well, as you can see, like this one's doing really well in a 4-inch pot. And if I pick up these soil blocks and look at them, look at the roots. The roots are all the way to the bottom of this soil block. And if you look at the height of the plant, you see that this is about 2 inches and this is about 4 inches. So whenever your seedling exceeds the height of the medium that it's in, it's getting top heavy and the growth is getting stunted up here. So really, these are ready to be planted into a new container. However, they're really happy and healthy, and I'm not concerned whatsoever. Now, these ones, I started it in January because I wanted to show all you guys the process of growing dahlias from seed. I'm very excited about that process. And this is the size they should be to plant in the garden, but I started them in January to show you. So these have to go into bigger containers, and they're going to be huge by the time they get into the garden. I'm actually starting those dahlia seeds, like I said, for that experiment. I'm starting them right now. I just checked. There's some sprouts happening today. So I'll be getting that going because it's about, these were started late January. That was it's like mid-March now. So that was 6 weeks ago that these were started from seed. So right now, until when I need to plant out, is about 6 weeks as well. So I know the dahlia seeds that sprout today are going to be about this size when they go in the garden. Now let's talk about leggy plants. Legginess is a very technical garden term, but basically what it means is that your plants need more light for the rate at which they're growing. Here I have some lunaria plants. This is money plant, or honesty is another name for it. It's a biennial, really, really cool plant. But you can see that the stems on these are getting a little bit leggy. They'll start to lean towards the light. They will have long stems with smaller leaves on the top and just not growing as beautifully as the rest of them. You want short stems and big leaves, and that happens when there's a ton of light. If they're not getting enough light, they're going to reach and stretch to get to that light, and that's where you get legginess. If that happens, some plants you can correct it, like tomatoes, you can actually bury the young plants deeper when you pot them up, and it totally fixes the leggy issues. Other plants, you might just need to toss them and start over. These lunaria, I'm going to watch them, keep them growing, and hopefully they will recover and grow nice and strong and not be worried about that. Other issues, if the leaf tips of your seedling start to turn brown, they're probably getting sunburned or they're getting too much fertilizer. Cut back on that. If you get helmet head, isn't that a fun one? I have an example. Helmet head. These are some Scabiosa seedlings right here. And helmet head is when the seed that the plant sprouted out of does not fall off of the plant. When you look at this tray, you can see how beautiful all these other Scabiosa are. And then this one right here, you have that first cotyledon, that's a seed leaf. And then the second seed leaf right here is still stuck inside the seed itself. Sometimes when this happens, it'll fall off on its own. It's not recommended that you pull it off because the risk of damaging is so high. This one actually pulled it off and it did damage the seed leaf, but the new leaves right here started growing. So that one's still going to be okay. This one, I don't know. If you're going to try and remove the helmet, just be very, very careful. And sometimes, okay, it's stuck on the stem. So I'm going to leave it just like that. I might come in with a snip and clean it, but if I try to break it off, the chance of breaking that stem are far too high. But really, this seedling is so darn weak. I mean, again, I started the same time as I started the rest of these. I might just say, that one's not strong enough. Don't even mess with it and call it done. But if you have a lot of helmet heads, increase the humidity will go a long way to soften those seed coats so it will grow. Or your spit onto your fingers and kind of get your saliva worked into those seeds, and that can also soften them, and hopefully they will fall off. Here I have a tray full of brassicas, I have kale, I have broccoli, I have cabbage, and then I also have some Johnny Jump Ups over here and some snapdragons over here. These are all cool season crops. That's why they're all planted together. Now, if you have this happen, you see here that these leaves at the bottom are turning totally yellow. They're yellowing on this one. They're yellowing on this one. Oh, that one just fell off. No, it's fine. This right here is a seed leaf, cotyledon, very fun science term. The cotyledons are those first leaves that came up, that beautiful little pair of seed leaves, and they're going to grow, and they're going to be happy, and they're going to be done doing their job and turn into this and fall off the plant. So if that happens, don't worry. That just means that they are done doing their job. You don't need to like pick them off, but they will eventually fall off anyway. They're easy to tell because this looks like a broccoli leaf, and that other one is very heart-shaped. That doesn't look like a broccoli leaf. They look very different, so it's really easy to tell seed leaves versus full-grown leaves. Now, since I have these snapdragons here, I had one question come in about snaps, and it was, if you plant different types of snapdragons in the same bed, will those seeds be true to whatever they were, or will they be different? Is that cross-pollinate? Is that the right word? Okay, yes, that's the right word. This question is talking about seed saving. And so when you have a flower like this that is pollinated by the bees and the seeds need to be grown every year as an annual, then yes, you have cross-pollination happen. With snapdragons, however, they have a very specific growth form with their flower petals being really tight together, and there are very few pollinators that are strong enough to push their way in there to get to the nectar. And so bumblebees are a necessary garden friend to have in order for your snapdragons to really be well pollinated. I was visiting my friend Misha. She has a beautiful farm on Bainbridge Island. Her Instagram handle is FarmLux, and I was saving seeds with her last fall and came across a cute little honeybee that was pollinating some snapdragons, and it was just a beautiful moment right next to her fountain. Gorgeous stuff. But these are snapdragons from her garden, and they're growing, and they're about to go in, and I'm very excited. The last question for today, best cut and come again flowers. This is from Andrea, probably one of my biggest friends and fans. Dre has lots of questions for me, and I love it. Thank you, Dre. Best cut and come again flowers. Okay, dahlias, cosmos, zinnias, straw flowers, calendula, monarda, that's also known as bee balm, cone flowers or echinacea, and lots of herbs. Those are all flowers and plants that when you snip them, it encourages the side buds to shoot, and I do that every time. Side buds shoot, new stems form, and you get more flowers. And if you don't prune them off, they will go to seed and stop flowering. So those types of varieties, again, dahlias, zinnias, cosmos, basil is a great one for this, coneflowers, calendula, they will all cut and they'll come back again. There are also a lot of garden perennials that if you have your first bloom and you cut them back, they will reflush and bloom a second time. Usually not as strong as the first time, but totally worth the effort. A few of those would be lavender. What else do I have? Daisies. Snapdragons will also do this. Anise hyssop, a lot of herbs like oregano or marjoram, they will rebloom if you remove those flower heads. Normally, Ask a Garden Coach are short little videos. This one, it's a little bit longer. It's chocked full, and I hope you guys have taken some tips you can put into your seed starting to get the best seedlings ever. If you have a specific plant that you're having issues with, leave me a question, put it in the comments below, tag friends that are seed starters, help me grow more gardeners because we need to grow gardeners together. Thank you for watching. I'm Carolyn May, and we will see you next time.